Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our beautiful Hamburg studio. My name is Yelena, and I'm happy to be here with you in the studio at the Hamburg Mobile Summit Live. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's super exciting to see so many of you here with us, and we're ready to continue. I know that this morning you had some great lectures here in the studio, and we are ready to continue. Okay, so let's see what we have planned for the rest of the day. We are going to have a panel discussion, and let's welcome our next speakers. Just a second. Okay, do we have the speakers here? Hello.
Hello.
We are here.
Hello, guys. It's good to have you here.
Hello, everyone.
I know that you're going to be talking about the COVID-19 and the effect it's had actually on the mobile games and apps market in general. I know that this is a very actual topic. I know that lots of us have been talking about it for the past year, even more than that. And we're very excited to listen to your point of view and see what you think is going to await us in the future. Over to you. Good luck. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much, Elena. Appreciate the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody within the conference and those watching on Twitch. My name is Carl Knights. I'm Managing Director for AppAnnie across EMEA. I'll be facilitating this panel this afternoon. For those of you that don't know AppAnnie, we're the world's leading data and analytics platform for mobile. Our topic for discussion today is COVID-19's effect on the mobile games and apps market. To set the tone at a high level in terms of what we've seen in some of the data at AppAnnie through the last year, we observed a 20% growth in time spent on mobile, up to 4.2 hours per day, on almost identical percentage growth in App Store spend, taking it to $143 billion in 2020. And we also saw a 26% increase in mobile ad spend to $240 billion, expected to rise to $290 billion this year. This morning, you've heard from social media companies and gaming companies who have experienced tremendous growth over the past year. However, during COVID lockdowns, a number of other sectors have experienced huge growth as well, driven out of our need to exercise, our need to educate ourselves, to keep in touch with the world's news, the world's opinions, and stay in touch with loved ones. So I'm delighted to facilitate this panel from a broad collection of companies from different sectors. And we'll ask each of them now to introduce themselves. If we can start with you, Scott.
My pleasure, Carl, and thanks so much for the introduction. Yeah, so I'm Scott Dunlap. I run app development for Adidas globally, which includes both our commerce apps and gives me the great privilege of also being the CEO and general manager of Runtastic, which is where we innovate on sport app experiences. And with that, I can hand it off.
Noya, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Noya, and I live in beautiful, sunny Israel. I've been working in the mobile apps industry for the last 10 years. And in the last 4 years, I've been leading the growth marketing at Viber, which is a mobile messaging app with over 1 billion registered users. And I'm responsible for top of the funnel, so bringing as many users as possible in, and then also on retention marketing, making sure these users stay for as much as possible. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you, Noya. Federico, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Federico Paderni. I'm the country manager for Twitter in Israel, and I've been leading some effort on behalf of Twitter with our mobile advertisers across EMEA.
Thank you, Federico. Alexander, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my name is Alexander. I'm director of ad tech and ad operations at Upday, which is a multi-channel news media, primarily known for pre-installed in all Samsung phones in Europe, but having a broader and broader product portfolio.
Thank you, Alexander. And last but by no means least, Roy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. My name is Roy Shiloach. I'm the head of monetization in JoyTunes. For those who don't know us here, so JoyTunes is an Israeli startup with one simple and inspirational mission of bringing the music learning to every household all around the world. Today we have 2 applications, one for learning piano and one for playing guitar. But soon more apps will come to the JoyTunes family, so every household will be able to fulfill their dream to learn music. Company is based in Tel Aviv, 120 employees. And for who hear that it's relevant for them, we are continue hiring professional growth managers.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the panel to introducing yourselves. And as you can see, a broad spectrum of ways in which we can improve ourselves, stay in touch with everything that we want and we need to on our day-to-day lives. So great panel. Let's get started. So a fascinating period of time to live through for all of us over the last 18 months. But if I could come to you first, Scott, and start with this question around what surprised you most about consumer behavior and its effect on your business during this last kind of COVID-19 period? Sure.
And I'm sure, like many of you, it's almost PTSD. I'm still kind of thinking about it and working our way through it. But, as somebody who came out of Silicon Valley 20 years ago, I'm always interested in where consumer technology can affect health. But I've never seen anything happen like what happened when COVID hit. You can imagine being at Adidas, we saw 2 things simultaneously. So first, in a matter of weeks, not only did our business stop because all the stores stopped and most of our wholesale partners also stopped, but we also had, the Euro was canceled. Every mass sporting event was canceled. And as sure many of you who are used to spending your weekends watching sports, like suddenly it all just disappeared. For a 70-year-old brand like Adidas, that's quite a shock to the system. But at the same time, we saw millions, literally, of individuals, many of them brand new to us, turning to fitness for the first time because they were, quite honestly, trapped in their apartments and trapped in their homes and looking for a way to stay fit. So it was just an extremely dramatic time. We were seeing 400, 500, 600% increases in some of our downloads organically in a single day. And the user behavior pattern was very different than what we had seen before. So it was both a shock and an opportunity, but I was proud of the team because using the tools that we all have, including yours, AppAnnie, we were able to very quickly take a look at what are the trends that are coming in and how can we jump on this very quickly. And because Runtastic is very much a digital team of its own that can adapt very quickly, we're able to, fill what usually takes a couple of years to make a brand event with a digital event of our own. We had millions of individuals sign up. We raised tens of millions for the World Health Organization. But I think more importantly, it was through that feedback we could see we were giving people a way out, a way to not only feel healthy about themselves, but contribute to the cause. And I think that all happened in about 20 days. So it was quite the shock. I'm sure the other panelists will have a similar story, but for us, it was quite transformational.
Thank you very much, Scott, and staggering speed at which you had to move at. And yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. Federico, if I could come to you next in terms of what your business saw during that similar period.
Well, Carla, I would say not sure if it's totally surprising, right? But during COVID at Twitter, obviously, we have seen more and more people leveraging our platform to see what's happening in the world. So that somehow was expected. And I believe actually Twitter played a key role during the lockdown, to keep our users closer to what most interested in them. And so what actually happened in the last, I would say, 18 months, 24 months is that in terms of users growth, we have seen our user base, tripled over the last 2 years. And we kind of reached almost 200 million at the end of 2020 to 200 million MDAUs. So that's similar to what you were mentioning at the beginning in terms of overall the ecosystem growing, faster than expected over the last year and a half. And maybe the interesting element is that from an outsider perspective, people assume that users on Twitter are very centered around news and politics. And while this is true, because obviously those are very large interest categories for our users, I would say only 25% of the new people that joined through the pandemic in the US have as news and politics as their primary interest, right? While the large majority, more than 75%, have very different primary interests like gaming, lifestyle, music, movies, TVs, and sports. So back to what Scott was mentioning, like a very large population of new users interested in how they can, for instance, exercise during a pandemic. The last element that may be slightly surprising is that people experience the best of Twitter, and then the engagement with our platform was surging, especially around like video content. We've seen like 38% year-over-year increase in tweet engagement, but 71% of all users session involve now video, and 34% increase year-over-year in watch time. So I suspect we have like a lot of folks in this panel in the audience as user acquisition manager and people that want to grow their own app. I think the main takeaway out of the pandemic is that video is definitely like one of the medium that's been growing fastest on Twitter.
Thank you very much, Federico. So to a similar point to Scott, in terms of those reasons that people are coming to Twitter, it's equally has been about a way to get out and explore as much as kind of being updated, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Great, thank you. I want to kind of come to the wider group now and start to understand what some of the changes were within your businesses during the impact of COVID. So, Noya, I'd love to come to you first, and the question around what products or strategies or iterations of those strategies, I should say, were born out of COVID's impact on your business. Were there any kind of significant pivots, and what lessons did you learn?
Sure. So as COVID started and basically taking over our lives and denying people from their basic freedom, Viber wanted to be like a silver lining, providing as much added value as possible. So to begin with, we stopped everything. We had a hackathon in which we tried to find ideas that would benefit our audience the most. And what won for the first prize was developing and pushing fast group video calls. We understood that was a necessity. First, we allowed 10 participants, then 20 participants, then 30 participants. Then we added grid view because we understood people use it for work and for studies and so on. Then we also enhanced the capabilities of our communities and bots to allow health authorities to communicate verified and trusted information to our users, such as the World Health Organization and so on. And last, we also invested quite a lot in our desktop app because users were using it much more often than previously. In terms of lessons, always be ready to move fast.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Noya. And Alexander, if I can come to you next, how did it impact Upday?
I mean, as you can imagine, a news app sees a spike in user levels when natural disasters hit like this. We saw a massive increase in user levels, but we saw a heavy and long-lasting drop in the traditional IO business, where the programmatic demand, which is more fluctuating, recovered rather quickly. And year over year, we ended up seeing a growth of 120%. So that meant to us that even though we have focused a lot of programmatic mediation and programmatic demand since the birth of the company, we continued into that field, and we actually took a step to make it even more dynamic. So we completely phased out the old waterfall model and put even Facebook over an open bidding. Now we're introducing a third header bidding solution because this was really the way to maintain revenues. So now our setup is more kind of a wild playground where everyone come with the highest bids and push each other up. What we then learned in order to keep the IO business alive is a lot of the advertisers reduce their branded campaigns, of course, but as Runtastic probably can acknowledge, there's still a certain level of user acquisition budgets that needs to keep the business alive. So how do you do that as a publisher? You need to concentrate on those performance based campaigns where you in-house the optimization process for the clients, and offer them some sort of low-risk business model that they can understand and they can agree to with a certain level of commitment or on monthly budgets. So in order to respond to that, we developed an AI that in real time optimize the CPM bits of these performance campaigns based on what are the KPIs of the campaign, and bit into this dynamic mediation through non-guaranteed line items. I know it might come off a little bit technical, but essentially what you do is you combine the IO business with the programmatic business in a way where the highest bid wins, and you kind of create your own network, which is what we try to do, or what we're doing right now in the whole Upday environment, and kind of level that performance advertisement in between our branded campaigns and the programmatic.
Excellent, thank you, Alexander. Thanks for the explanation as well. That's useful to get. So, Roy, how did it at JoyTunes? What were the kind of strategic iterations or changes that you made?
So, not surprisingly, the COVID had, a major impact on our business during 2020, like everyone. And lots of product and growth strategies were born out of it. But, in the last few days when I thought on the panel and what to share with the audience, I've actually chosen to share the most important part, to my opinion, because we always seen JoyTunes' social responsibility and doing good as the top mission of the company. If it's for our learners, music teachers, and actually everyone in the world. So for us, it was quite obvious that instead of looking on the company growth or any kind of immediate business opportunities from the pandemic, the first thing that we should do as a company is to take some business and product actions in order to support all the ecosystem. I think that it took us not more than a few days to create a task force, a dedicated one, which will be responsible on initiating activities with only one purpose of doing good to the world. Just to give you some example for that, after a few days, we have launched a special pay what you can offer that allowed everyone in the world to pay any amount they wanted in order to become a subscriber, and all the income was donated to medical charity. We opened our teacher application completely for free because we knew that most of our teachers all around the world are out of work. We gave coupon to companies that want to give the employees some home entertainment, and during the pandemic day we sent free content, courses, songs, or even live broadcast to all our learners.
Tremendous. Thank you very much, Roy. That's a great perspective of how your business responded. So, Federico, if I could come to you next on same question in terms of the changes that you made at Twitter in response to COVID last year.
Yeah, look, like, back to what Roy was saying, I think, broadly speaking, a slightly different take, I would say, but I believe the key strategic priorities of our product roadmap at Twitter have been set maybe pre-COVID, so pre-pandemic, and remained consistent over the last 18 months. But back to what Roy was saying, definitely, we have seen new trends, and so some features have been prioritized. Similar to what Roy was saying, in terms of incentivizing, give more tools to the creator community, for instance, right? So that was definitely one focus for us. Broadly speaking, I think to improve the Twitter user experience, we've been focusing on two macro areas. One is everything around topics and interest, and the second is around conversation, right? So during the pandemic, we introduced topics to make it easier to find and follow the most interesting conversation happening on Twitter. We have been scaling this product enormously, and now we have more than 7,300 topics globally, right? So that means that new people that joined Twitter over the last 18 months, they don't necessarily need to follow other other accounts, but then they can follow interest instead, right? So that was like a big effort for us. The second is communities, and we announced this like about a couple of weeks ago. Will be launched like at the end of this year. But again, is a new tools for users to join a community that is moderated and talk to other users on a certain topic. And the third is like a list that has been maybe a feature been denied, and over the last couple of years, we revamped completely the feature to give again more tool for our users to follow the topic and categorize them the way they want. The second macro areas is everything around conversation. We have been hearing that we launch spaces. Well, technically right now we are rolling out Twitter spaces where like a live audio conversation happens on Twitter. So that's completely like a new use case for Twitter, and the reception from our users has been incredible over the last 18 months. And we have been announcing super follow that give extra levels of access and content from the favorite people that you follow on Twitter, and the tip jar, similar to what Roy was mentioning, ability of users to send money to their best Twitter users and content creators. And obviously we acquired the View, that is like a service that make it easy to start and publish editorial newsletter. Again, new tools for content creators on our platform. So I would say these are been the main focus over the last 18 months during the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Federico. Yeah, some consistent themes there around contribution to society and community. So that's great. Thank you. And Scott, coming to you next on Runtastic as well. We'd love to get your response to that question.
Sure. First, I feel like I have to tell Federico I've lost hours due to Spaces. So I think that was by design, but thank you for that. I'm not sure.
That's a good news. That's a good news, Scott, yeah.
But yeah, in thinking about product and strategy iterations, I'm lucky to be on this esteemed panel where everyone here is very data driven and able to act quickly on that data to say iterate a quick test. But I will tell you, in the 7-year-old Adidas brand, that's a fairly new thing. So it was probably the most powerful thing that we did was right when everybody was wondering, oh my gosh, what's happening globally? We had tons of insight. We had tons of data. And on the commerce side of things, the digital team was so quick to respond to say, wait, if these people in this country are looking for these products, let's change our content to be more timely. Let's change our content to feed this specific community and get it out in 48 hours or 72 hours. And that became a process that we did every day instead of just an emergency thing. And we could just watch, doubling and tripling of how many people are coming to the only store that's open, which is our digital store. So that was fun to see. And the bigger company, like this digital transformation that I know all of us kind of live day to day. But as you know, it could be years to sometimes get a culture to adapt that. And then suddenly they're addicted to all of this data that's coming in. And on the sport app side, it was something we always knew, which was if you get the right community together, and in particular show them a way that they can drive purpose, they can be a part of the solution of what they're seeing, that's a huge unlock. So, we were able to take a lot of the learnings that we had with what we called the Home Team Hero Challenge that was raising money for the World Health Organization, and turn it into Run for the Oceans, which actually just ended last week, where we aligned with, ending plastic waste. Every kilometer that you ran or walked or hiked would be 10 plastic bottles that we would pull from the beaches and oceans and then turn into recyclable materials. And, I think our original high water mark we had on that was about 2 million participants. But thanks to the learnings we had last year, we exceeded 5 million participants. And I think our commitment finally peaked out at 500,000 pounds of plastic that we're going to end up recycling, which was great. But you could just see this additive aura that's coming off of it, that people just love to be a part of a solution on that level of scale. So I think we're just beginning to turn up the dials on that one. But if it hadn't been for COVID, I don't think we would have had that same breakthrough.
Thank you, Scott. And yeah, thank you to the group on that. Some consistent themes around kind of community and purpose, which are very compelling. But if I can kind of take the conversation now to more around, monetization and growth decisions that were taken during that period. And Roy, if I could come to you first, love the story around how JoyTunes responded during the lockdown. But in terms of that question of monetization and growth decisions, What did you undertake during that time, and reflecting on them, how do you feel about them now?
So, together with our doing good efforts, we are still in business. And as you can probably understand from the product portfolio and the mission, driven from the fact that people spend much more time at home during the lockdown, we have seen a huge peak in numbers. I'm talking on almost 4 times comparing to any regular days in terms of installation and paying subscriber with much lower CAC. But if I need to look back and point out on the most important growth decision that we took during the pandemic time, is basically the decision not to squeeze the lemon. And always to look on the day after the pandemic will end and after the lockdowns will end as well. We basically understood during the lockdown times that it's a different game now, and far from being a short one. So every decision that we are taking in terms of monetization and growth need to be considered and tested in a long-term metrics. We have here in the audience lots of UA managers, and everyone knows that whenever you are running UA campaign for subscription product, you should base them on some LTV predictors and renewal assumptions. But in the very first few weeks on the pandemic and the lockdown, we basically, as a team, we had zero option to predict how the cohorts that installed the application during the lockdown will behave after that. We basically needed to understand that we should create much more conservative model. We should look on the subscription ramp up that we have seen during those time with some different metrics. The conversion are different, the refund may be different, the renewal factors might be different. So all the LTV calculation can be totally different. In addition to that, we have decided to give extra attention to all our unit economics. If to keep our eye on the LTV CAC ratio, if to change our cashback period decision, mainly under the assumption that the recession is here or at least about to come. Great example which I can actually give about it is China. If you can all remember, China was the first country to go in the lockdown and to get out of the lockdown. So looking on the campaigns that we have run in China and the behavior of the user could give us very good perspective on how to adjust our campaigns all around the world.
Thank you very much, Roy, and keen to revisit, some of the perspectives as we come out of lockdown, which is a question I'm keen to come to with all the group. But Alexander, if I could come to you next. You touched on this a few months ago in terms of how your business adapted, to ensure, kind of driving your own user acquisition campaigns. But yeah, keen to hear more on that in terms of monetization and growth decisions that you took at Upday.
Yeah, I completely agree with Roy that identifying the sustainable changes that also has the potential for future growth has become more difficult in some sense, and in another sense more straightforward, right? Because there's a lot of things that just doesn't work anymore. For Upday, we primarily pre-installed, so we had to find other routes of growth in reach rather than user acquisition. And for this, we wanted to make use of this momentum with the Corona and create some sort of brand awareness and organic growth. So for the performance network I mentioned before, we actually built out ties to the whole Axel Springer network in the world and got all the publishers connected and created a connection to that inventory through this performance platform. And on the more product-oriented side, we created some OEM deals with Huawei to be pre-installed on their phones. We redesigned the app and created different B2B partnerships. Most recently one with Facebook. That's a little bit controversial here in Germany, but that's what it is. And then we came out with a whole new iOS app and soon going to launch a esports news channel for those who are interested in that. So there's a lot of new projects going on, but if you look away from the reach for a moment and look more on the monetization side, it became clear that you very quickly identified who's your true partners here. So for us, we went through the whole demand chain, if you can call it that, and even reached out to third and fourth level header bidders to make new connection, make new tweaks, fix the bugs, a lot of cleanup to be done, automating a lot of internal processes in order to automate or make the whole speed of bookings faster. And then we introduced an omni-channel creative setup, basically, so we could say video, interstitials, banners, natives, and kind of introduce new features to existing products and just make what we had better, basically.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexander. And I want to kind of move on for time for make sure we get our key last question in. But Noya, I did want to get your perspective before we come to that last question in terms of advertising and marketing. You know, what major shifts did you see for your business during this last 18 months?
Sure. So I'll make it quick. So as for monetization, everyone spoke a lot too. So I'll just say that obviously as a messaging app, we had better engagement, which allowed better ROI on paid user acquisition, which allowed great expansion. Also, to begin with, for the first couple of months, ads media for our vertical was kind of cheap. So again, it allowed greater expansion. And connecting to what Roy said, we had to reestablish how we look at cohorts. What really worked for us in terms of user acquisition was leveraging our partnerships with health authorities and governments that collaborated with us and basically also became Viber's advocates and got users to come in. So these would be the key components of what we saw.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Noya. And so to the last question, which again I'd love to hear from the whole panel on, and it's really around, you know, what we expect to last. What will be the lasting behaviours we expect to see come out of this pandemic period, and how are you thinking about factoring those into your roadmap or your business? And Federico, I'd love to come to you first here in terms of what you think the lasting behaviours will be.
So Carla, it's actually like is a good question, a good timing. We recently launched the version 2 of what we call Twitter Trends, which is our a global research where we basically mine and analyze billions of tweets to understand the major trends on our platform. We launched this originally at the beginning, at the end of 2019, and we recently did an update on this research. So obviously the pandemic played a big role in this version 2. With some of the trends that have been amplified, some have been redirected, and some are like brand new, right? And obviously the virus, is something that came out like very, very clearly. So the first trend is obviously well-being. So we have seen millions of tweets and conversation about this topic with a lot of users obviously prioritizing self-care for themselves and each other. I think like a second trend is around like how the lockdown forced most of us in a life at home, and this has been like this created an emerging trends towards creator culture. So most of our users creating something for themselves with new hobbies or new becoming new independent creators in some form. I think the lockdown and also the impossibility for many of us to travel and discover new places obviously increase the need to escape. So a third trend is the one around like what we call everyday wonders. So people joining our platform with a fascination to discover what's around them. And the fourth trend is probably something around, is another effect of the pandemic and then in the lockdown. Has been like many of us working from home in a sort of like a virtual bubble. And this created a strong trend around like tech life, right? So a lot of people talking and tweeting about what it takes to make, a better connected life while working from home. So I would say these are the four major trends on our platform that we have seen coming out of the pandemic.
Great, thank you, Federico. Good to set up. And Noya, if I could come to you next on this question, the lasting behaviors you expect to see.
Sure. So two very noticeable trends. Sorry. One would be users who discovered our desktop app are continuing to use it, I guess, for study, for work, for family gathering. And these users are much more sticky, which is great. And second one, which is interesting, is to see that people got used to interact with bots to get information. And we still see it with a variety of bots, not necessarily around COVID, but even around weather and taxis availability and so on. So we'll definitely also make some effort to keep enhancing these.
Thank you very much, Noya. And Roy, if we can come to you next, more piano, more guitar, is that going to continue?
More or less, now we are almost few months after the lockdown in Israel has ended, and we have some better understanding on how the pandemic affect on the gradual changes of music learners' behavior and habits. So from our business perspective, we are looking on two main new world patterns. The first one is the shift to home education. And the second one, and of course, is the digital transformation that the world has experienced and still experiencing. From our perspective, we are seeing a huge opportunity for JoyTunes in the new world rules, where people will be more dependent on homeschooling. Social distance will remain to some extent, and more people are looking for digital answer for their day-to-day needs. But we are as a company understand that more and more of our growth features and our roadmap need to be based on giving more value to the learners, to have much more investment in the content that we are providing them, and of course, continue sticking to the company's original vision of providing music learning solution to every household in the world. Just to give you a few examples of that, starting from providing multi-profile family solution across all our application, looking on specific segment, the needs of teenagers, kids, or even elderlies should be different. So we need to give them the most seamless and easiest solution for their mobile device. And of course, making sure that we are able to provide the same solution that we have today for piano and guitar in much more musical instruments.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Roy. And Alexander, if we can come to you as well on the same question, lasting behaviors.
Yeah, I think in the beginning of the corona, we realized the amount of opportunities we have in our existing setup. I will definitely continue to explore those opportunities and also see how can you tweak and improve what you already have, both from a supply side and a demand side. We had a very good programmatic stack before Corona, but that have grown, and we just every change we make, we keep seeing new opportunities ahead. So that part is definitely going to continue. Then we will emphasize heavily on this Axel Springer audience network we have developed in terms of both reach, but also in-house more of these performance campaigns on behalf of our clients, and improve that algorithm based on, of course, how you optimize towards CTRs and different post-click conversions, but also what first-party data you can put into the algorithm. And then I think we have experienced a new era for dynamic and free market for digital advertisement. And that's something we intend to both push forward and fully exploit in both our own field and how we sell stuff, but also how we're going to buy it.
Thank you very much, Alexander. And to round this question off, Scott, what do you expect to be some of the lasting behaviors for Runtastic?
Many of the trends everybody has already mentioned. I'll get specific on one of the sport and fitness related ones because that is our mission through sport. We have the power to change lives, and coming out of COVID, it's one of the bigger tailwinds I've ever seen in this industry in terms of people turning to health. But one part we found fascinating was we originally looked at virtual races as a substitution for many of the marathons and half marathons being canceled. But now that we're coming out of it, it looks a lot like the sort of hybrid work environment that we're all into now, where we're going to do a couple days at home and a couple days. We're seeing that the virtual races remain just as popular. As a matter of fact, for many of the major marathon brands, it's extending their reach at a price point that's much lower than having to physically go to a city, although it's not nearly as fun as touring around Hamburg for the Hamburg Marathon. But you can be a part of that community, and it could definitely be motivating and help you stay on a path to fitness. And then similarly, we're seeing some changes in our behavior even as gyms are being opened up. Now that you have all of this fitness in your pocket, there's going to be this hybrid experience of how you stay fit, how you stay workout, and the ability to fire up a fitness plan no matter where you are, whether that's in the gym or other places. I think that's a reality that's come out of COVID. So we look at it as a very positive trend, that digital and physical world blurring like never before. But I think it's only going to be positive for all of us.
Thank you very much, Scott, and a great point to finish. Thank you very much for all the insight that you've all shared. For me, tremendous panel in kind of collating all of the perspectives during these last 18 months, but most interestingly, what we can expect moving forward. So with that, Elena, we'll hand back to you. I don't believe we've got time for questions, but maybe I'm wrong.
Thank you very much, guys, for a wonderful panel. It was actually very interesting to learn, how the COVID impacted yourselves, your businesses, and just your point of views on what's going to happen in the future. We don't have much time, that's true, but I have one personal question for myself, if you don't mind. You've mentioned all the impacts and all the trends, all the things that are trending these days, like well-being, like people trying to escape, sports, etc., music. But do you think that since now life's coming back to normal, more or less, the restrictions are being lifted one by one, do you think that the volume of basically users will decrease for some of the group of apps, let's call it that? So the trending ones, of course, I think it's becoming a lifestyle in a way, correct me if I'm wrong. What about others? Would you name a few areas, let's say, of apps that would decline in terms of numbers, that will become less popular as the time goes?
I mean, I can tell you from the perspective of a news publisher, people are about to be fed up with the dramatic news and what is going on horrible things in the world. So I think here over the summer, you're going to see people engage less with their apps and try to enjoy the freedom outside.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Yep. No more opinions? That's okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I understand. This is a very broad question. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us today. It was wonderful to see you in the studio, and hopefully very, very soon we'll see each other offline and enjoy each other's company. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.